This morning we're talking to Line Hadsbjerg from remarkableworld.org. Welcome to the Red Zone.
Thank you.
To start off, let's get an introduction into what you do and why you do it.
My work is within the humanitarian space, and my passion is South Africa. That's where most of what I do is centered. And the medium with which I work with primarily is writing.
And your book, large coffee table book, beautifully presented, Remarkable South Africans, it showcases celebrities around South Africa doing good, but not only that, but also the everyday giants of our nation. What made you choose to use celebrities as well as the unknowns within our country doing good for their communities on a small and a large scale?
Remarkable South Africans was a 2-year initiative where I set out across South Africa wanting to capture the good news stories. I think a lot of bad news comes out through the media in this country, but I feel very inspired by the individuals. And so it was a journey into the lives of, as you've said, the everyday giants. We traveled more than 13,000 kilometers, interviewing all sorts of people from the remote areas of KwaZulu-Natal through to Khayelitsha, to the tough streets of Johannesburg, hearing their stories, what they do within the smallest circles, really, and try to expand that across society. So from a woman who takes care of a few children in a small remote community, through to the likes of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, well-known celebrities like Johnny Clegg or Minister Trevor Manuel. So it was really to try and capture the stories of humanity within this country.
Now, you were born in Denmark, but have spent most of your life schooling and living in South Africa. What makes South Africans, specifically South Africans, remarkable to you?
You know, I think there is Ubuntu, which I think forms a foundation of our society. I think, sadly, it needs to be relived, and we need to be reminded again and again. But I think South Africa has been through a history, a very complex history, and came out of that with great hope and great potential for its people. And it's about holding on to that. And I think it was a privilege to have lived through that transition in this country. And I do think that South Africans carry with them this great promise of Mandela, and I don't think we should ever forget that.
So that basically was the message that you wanted to portray in the book, is the hope, the passion.
Yes, and that we all have the possibility and the capacity to be remarkable South Africans, regardless of how much or a little. That's irrelevant. What's important is that we really come to the root of who we are as a nation and as an individual, and that we all have the capacity to do something for our neighbour.
And the feedback that you've received so far?
Well, I think it's easy to get positive feedback on a positive message. And it has been great, and I work together with the world-renowned photographer Pep Bonnet. So the pictures in the book are exceptional. So it's not just stories that inspire us. It's a beautiful book, and the images are very powerful. And to complete it, the entire initiative is non-profit. So proceeds from the book go to the projects selected by the individuals featured in the book.
Now, you've also been working on a documentary called Into the Shadows, which basically showcases the underworld of Johannesburg that most of us never really get to see. What experience and how did you feel going into these situations, seeing these people, how they live, interviewing them, people that are the same age as you, have the same passions and the same dreams as you, but live in completely different circumstances?
Into the Shadows is perhaps the flip side of the coin in many ways. We came into the inner city of Johannesburg. I think it's an area that we, in our minds, associate with a lot of crime, a lot of violence. Many don't really venture in unless they've got a very specific purpose. They go in and leave again. But what we found is that there are many slum buildings within the center of Johannesburg. And we're talking about 250,000 people that live in conditions that are so extreme and are so desperate, where there's no electricity, no water. And it was about going into this space and trying to shine a light on a situation, on a crisis that's happening at the center of at the heart of our city, where I think the vast majority of South Africans are completely oblivious.
One of the main points that I found most poignant in the teaser of your In the Shadows documentary is that apparently South Africans are quite violent against or towards immigrants and asylum seekers. What have you experienced with that?
You know, it's a complex issue, so there's not one answer to that, because it stems from a lot of other frustrations that lie with a lot of the local people who have also fallen short of their dreams for a lot of other reasons. And what happens is that you have thousands of foreigners risking their lives, running from desperate situations, coming into Johannesburg, and they're met with a lot of violence. They're met with brutality, and also from the police. And I think there's a lot of very controversial issues happening within the centre of Johannesburg that we're not aware of. And yes, there is a violence, but it's kind of been inherited. It's rife, but it stems out of a deep frustration and a deep sadness of the people, I think.
So ultimately, that negativity that you show and the sadness and the struggle almost into the shadows almost juxtaposes the positive attitude and the positive message that you are trying to put across in Remarkable South Africans. But they both ultimately have an underlying truth.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we discovered, that you go into these places that are desperate, but you realize the great humanity you find there, the caliber of the individuals, the integrity, and we've been greatly moved by that. And I could give endless examples, and I hope that this documentary, Into the Shadows, will show that as well, that within this desperate situation you have some incredible stories of individuals who, despite all, persevere and dream and are trying to make a better life for themselves. And I hope that will come across into the Shadows. And to see the trailer of it, one can go into intotheshadows.org and get a glimpse of the work that we're trying to do there.
And when does it officially come out?
At the moment, we're getting funding together to complete the rest of the documentary. So we have a glimpse, we've got all the content, and it's all post-production phase at the moment.
You say that all your projects are ultimately a means to, or a way in which you want to capture the human spirit.
Yeah.
What is the human spirit to you?
I think that comes to, it's that, again, I come up with the word Ubuntu because it runs as a thread throughout. It's about looking to the other, the sacrificing of oneself for the benefit of others. I think that is the best of the human spirit.
And do you have any future projects that you're working on?
Into the Shadows, of course, is very relevant at the moment, and I also work on an organisation called Seed Community, where we benefit young girls who have finished matric in Johannesburg but don't have the means to study further, and we provide interest-free loans and mentoring for these girls. And so that's a small project that's coming up at the moment, where we have 28 girls under our wing, but very interesting and, again, very inspiring.
Line Hadsbjerg, thank you for joining.
Thank you.